All right, I guess this is live now. I'm going to focus on the terminal and start my talk. What an intro, right? All right, so this is quite a loud title. Let's demystify it a little. First, I'll tell you a few things about myself. I'm a web developer. I primarily focus on the front end of things, and I really enjoy and do make a lot of front end tooling. I really want to get into mechanical keyboards, though. I'm a big advocate of European layout, and if you ever try to search for those, there are like 5 on the market, which is not that great. And I enjoy writing Vim plugins when I'm bored. What else? Oh, I'm an Alacrity user, by the way. And then we have a question. Why am I speaking about this today? So about 10 years ago, I saw like this quote. I'm gonna read it out loud so we are all everyone is on the same page. So a perfect editor has nothing redundant and everything that I need. If it doesn't, I install a plugin and it has everything that I need. If the plugin does not exist, I write my own plugin and the editor has everything that I need. And I think that really resonated with me at the time. So I didn't even know what Vim was like at the moment. Though when I finally discovered Vim for the things that I needed to use it for, it really like hit home. It was like, hey, that's the sweet spot right there. So what I'm gonna talk about today is actually I'm gonna try to motivate you to write your very first Vim plugin and share it with the community. Uh, like whenever we write plugins, it usually we just want to scratch this like sweet little like itch that just like hurts us during our workflow, and then we just want to like put it out there so everyone else can use it and leverage from it also. The only thing you need to know for this is if you have your own VMRC, then um, you would probably want to know what's going on there, and if you like can distinguish a few lines there, then you're good. Even if you're like a matured plugin author, I think you can still get a few ideas from this talk. If your name is Tim Pope, it might not be for you. So let's move on. We have quite a few things to cover. So without further ado, let's just get into it. Uh, First of all, why do people get into Vim? Vim is great. Everyone got their own reason to get into it, though these ideas are really important because if you put your plugin out there and you want other people to use it, you probably want to pay attention to these since they're kind of like a big thing. So first of all, speed. And it's not just that speed that you might first think about it. Oh, hey, I can like edit things at the speed of my thought. No, personally, I got into Vim because in all the job, I had to edit like really large files, like a few gigs of a file. So I was a Sublime user at the time. And if I try to open one in Sublime, it would like freeze for like, I don't know, 20, 30, whatever seconds. Atom was start becoming a thing. I tried it out and it wasn't that great. It froze every single time on me. And then I tried Vim and like the only limitation it had is like literally how fast can a computer read a file from a disk. And that was great. Ergonomics are really important. I at least know a few people who like literally got into Vim because they had issues with their wrists, and Vim like led them to stay in the software industry, which is great. I'm pretty sure Primogen had a similar experience. Vim is extremely flexible, as we all know, and let's not lie, it's kind of cool to geek out every now and then. So let's move on. What types of plugins are there? You can write your own theme, it would be a plugin. You can extend Vim's syntax and then add new types of syntax to Vim. It is a plugin. Uh, you can make utility plugins. That's when something that just like solves one particular thing really well. You can make friends with external tools. For instance, Vim Fugitive that makes friends with Git, or fzref.vim that makes friends with fzref. Those are really great. There are also LSP and TreeSeeder, which I'm not really going to cover in this talk since they're kind of like a whole different types of dists, and you already heard some of it in the past, and some of it you'll definitely hear a whole lot in later talks. So let's take these things apart. First of all, what makes a great plugin? A plugin should solve one problem like exceptionally well. It should be accessible. It like if you're putting it out there and you want people to use it, you probably want to both people who use Vim and near Vim to be able to use it. You'd like it to be cross-platform because people might be on Windows and they also want to try it out. Why would you limit it? They should be a fairly low entry bar. So if you're like a less experienced Vimmer, you should be able to just install it, like copy paste code from the setup section, and it should just work out the box without relying on some external dependencies that may or may not be on the user's machine. As we learned from the previous talks, Vim is like used to have a really good documentation and people are really used to it. A plugin should know how to handle its own errors, and preferably it should be able to be lazy loaded. So here I'm going to show you a little demo of a few plugins that I wrote like from way back till like somewhat recently. These are all really tiny, but they're going to illustrate you the idea that you can start really small, and then as you like grow your expertise, you can like start writing more complex things. So let's go to like some project. As I was like coming from Sublime, I was very used to like tabs, and I'm not used to like and I really wanted a way to navigate like you would in a browser. So for me, I picked leader. Leader is space. So whenever I go like space 3, I would go to the third tab. If I go leader 9, I would go to the last tab, like a browser would. So that one's really small. Another one was I've added support for the syntax of browser list. This, if you're in a web, that's where you define which browsers you want to support. And the next thing you know, that thing moved to the browser list organization, and now apparently I'm a part of it. Who knew? What else? Let's go back here. Another fun one was, here's an absolutely empty project, right? What is the very first thing you do when you like start a new project? You don't mind the COC at the bottom. You don't like create a package on or install dependencies or anything else. You want to commit something. So the very first thing you do is probably you want to git ignore, so you don't like commit some random trash or dependencies or something else. So for me, it would be Node. I press tab, it auto completes to Node, and then it just populates the a git ignore from like a known source. However, if I remove that and then I try to do this thing again without providing any arguments to it, it would open FZF for me. It checked if FZF was installed, then it would like open the menu where I could pick like Node, for instance. If Telescope would be installed, then probably would go for Telescope. Another fun one would be bad practices. As you're starting, you're probably like start leaning towards some of the bad practices. So if I spam J, then it started warning me like, hey, you like spam J too much. Maybe you shouldn't be doing that because it's not really good thing. Same thing with the splits. You probably want to use buffers instead. Why not? What else? What else? Another fun one, and this is the last one I picked, was language server. I started writing it as a COC extension and recently moved it to its own language server. So if you're into not CSS, front end in general, and you use CSS modules, then you're used to like importing them like this. During the build, they would turn into this dictionary, and then you would like use them here somehow. However, what if we want auto completion? Because the CSS modules, they come from a different file. So we just type CSS dot, and then we get the whole completion, which is pretty neat. But it doesn't just stop there. If we go to definition, we jump to a different file, and it knows precisely that the name of the class name was concatenated from this comp button and disabled. And note how these dashes were, if we go back, were moved to the camel case notation, which is pretty cool. So that was just a small demo, but just to show you that you can start really small, and then like as you grow your expertise, start building something more complex. So you've decided on an idea, you've just settle that, all right, you're going to write a plugin. Which language do we pick? We have quite a few options. First of all, we have the good old Vim script. It would work in both Vim and NeoVim. Duh. We have Vim script 9. That's just around the corner. It's not out yet. It's not going to be backward compatible. It's probably not going to work in NeoVim. So, however, it's promised to be quite fast. We also have remote plugins. That's when you can write your plugin in pretty much any language you want, as long as it knows how to communicate with Vim, and people can consume it in both Vim and NeoVim, so it's a completely cross-platform experience. The only caveat here is that now the user has to make sure that the runtime of this language is available on their machine. So if you write a plugin in Python or Node, then the user needs to make sure that they have Node or Python installed. There's also Lua. I cannot not talk about Lua. So in Vim, it would work, but you would need to be a remote you need to write a remote plugin. In NeoVim, oh yes, absolutely. If you want to write something specific, exclusive to NeoVim, if it's like something that's only going to work in NeoVim because this feature is never going to make it to Vim, then you can absolutely go with Lua, and you're going to have a great experience. I've also put here coc.nvim, even though it's just a plugin for both Vim and NeoVim on its own, though I've put it here because it's not like an ordinary plugin. It more plays a role of a complete platform for other plugins and extensions that you can install on top of it and write them in JavaScript or whatever compiles to JavaScript, and then it would work the same way in both Vim and NeoVim, which is quite great. So we have all these options. The question is, do we still need to learn Vim script? Absolutely. You don't have to be a whiz at it, but you should be able to read it without real issue and understand what's going on. That thing is important because you'll be Googling about stuff, you'll be looking up the docs, you'll be just reading quite a decent amount of Vim script while you'll be developing your thing, regardless of which language you're going to pick. So how do you learn Vim script, you ask? There are two really great resources. There is this really amazing book called Learn Vim Script the Hard Way. It's available online for free. You can go there, you can read it. It's probably going to take you a couple of hours to finish, so please do. Also, just go to the docs and just look up the right plugin thing. And as we already know, docs are amazing. So there are quite a few directories that you should know about, and we're going to take a look at them one by one now. The bottom ones, the green ones, I'm not going to cover today because it's otherwise it's going to be take quite some time. So yeah, let's go. First of all, the colors. So if you decide that you want to write your own theme, then this is probably the easiest way in. That's like a gateway thingy into writing Vim plugins. So you just create a colors directory, put it in your repository, create one or however many themes you want there, and that's what the whole thing contains of. So let's take a quick look at it. So first of all, you give it a name, the same as the theme you want. You basically tell, hey, just forget all of the highlighting that ever existed, because people can change themes throughout the Vim session. And then you just basically, as you do in English, you say, hey, highlight this highlighting group and apply these styles to it. That's as straightforward as that. One thing I probably have not showed here is that you can also link some certain highlighting groups to link towards other highlighting groups, but you can look it up in help highlight. What else? Pro tip. So imagine when you're first starting, you're probably not gonna know about every single highlighting group out there. So for instance, I would like to change the color of this green thing and I have no idea what it's called, right? However, if you have installed both, I'm not even sure if you need the tree shader itself. maybe you only need the playground. But if you have both, you go TSH tab, because I can never remember the name of the whole thing, and you have a floating window that will tell you, hey, these are the highlighting groups that you have under the cursor. In this particular kind, they're like kind of linked to strings. So if I want to change the color of every string out there, I would have to highlight string, apply these colors, or otherwise I can say highlight MKD code and apply some colors, which is quite great. What else? FTDetect, that stands for file type detection. You put it in this path with usually it would be your file type or your plugin name, because you may want to detect multiple file types. So usually this file only contains of a few lines. You say, hey, every time someone opens buffer with this extension, please set this file type. This is like literally everything that it's used for. Another good one is now FT plugin, which stands for file type plugin. This is a file where you apply all of the buffer specific settings. So for instance, in this case, first, we have to have a guard where we say, hey, if this file has already been sourced for this buffer, please do not apply it again. This is needed in case someone, let's say they open a file and then they manually change the file type and then they change the file type back. So instead of like reapplying certain stuff, you just like skip it. And then you apply some mappings that would be only local to this buffer. And if you go to a different buffer, they would not work there. So that's pretty straightforward. So the plugin, this is probably like the core of your plugin, right? Plugin directory. Everything you put there is going to be sourced on like during the Vim startup. So you don't really want to make it like enormous. So here we have the same thing. At the beginning, we have a guard. So if someone decides to like resource the vimrc or init.vim, we are not gonna like reapply these mappings or settings or like redefine some comments. We just like exit early, and then we create some like global mappings, comments, auto comments, etc. Whatever you want. So in this case, we just define this really large function and we say, hey, whenever a user is going to call this like do stuff command, please call this function, which is like overall it's great. However, we like this kind of hints to us that this really large function doesn't really have to be there on a boot up. We don't really need to parse it and like we don't want the user to like sit and wait there while like the Vim script, this Vim script is going to be parsed. So we can kind of do something with it. And the answer is autoload. So what we do is we remove this giant function and we call this node, this bound separated name like full bar bus. So for the web developers out there, this is basically a dynamic import. For everyone else, this is during the startup, Vim would only know where to look for this function. Where do you actually define the function? So once a user actually calls this do stuff thing, Vim would go like, hey, where are all of the autoload directories they know? And then, hey, this thing starts with foo, so we need a foo directory there. There is a bar name of the file there, and there is a bus function. So once this function would be called, it would look up the correct file, source it, and like execute the function, which is quite great. So the good practice, it doesn't really make sense if you autoload something, though you initially like call it straight away. Now we need to read two files instead of one, so please don't do that. This thing might be surrounded with some more code that's like very local specific. So I think this case it's totally fine to do. What else? Oh, how could I forget the documentation? As we already know, the people expect documentation to be decent. So what do? We have a file with the documentation for our plugin, and we have some tags so people can find the like references to our documentation. So this is what the documentation content usually looks like. You just have the name of the file, you have your name, the license, where to find your plugin, and you just list your features. If you want, you can share more examples or like, I mean, we all opened help and we know what it looks like, and this is what it looks like. So why do we need these like funny star surrounded tags all around this file. Then there's the text file. This is how whenever you type help and you start typing something, you type tab and it just auto completes, and then when you press enter, it jumps like straight there, like directly to the line. So it's a file where you basically have tab separated tag name, plugin name, file name, so it knows where to look for that tag, and in this case it's also like star surrounded name of a tag, though it can be pretty much anything else. The star surround thing is just I guess a thing that everyone agreed on. Then what if you decided not to go with the Vim script? What if you decided to make something exclusive to Lua? What then? Well, also, I'm not gonna cover the rebuild plugins, but new Vim only. Let's say you just went with the new Vim only route. First of all, let's respect the Lualand rules. Let's not really pollute the global scope or like bind anything to the global. You might probably want to get a linter, and also don't be scared to tap into Vimland when necessary. I have more about it on the next slide. So yeah, before we go there, I think I saw someone who copy pasted a library into their plugin for parsing JSON, though you could just call vimfn decode JSON, I think it's called. And also at this point, there is also a native one. So you probably don't be worried about calling Vim script from your Lua files. So the one important thing to note here is there are two ways you can call an Lua API. One is vim.api.something that you can call. This one would call an actual native new Vim API. It will work really good. The other one is vim.fn, something that you want to do. That one is basically a way for you to like get your hands into the Vim script land without actually writing Vim script. So every function you call would actually underneath the hood call the Vim script. So if possible, do avoid it. If not, then it's fine. What else? Yeah, if you decide to go with Lua, the things that you probably going to be your new best friends are the help, get a Lua language server, extremely useful, get familiar with vim.inspect. That's something that allows you to print non-primitive values to the like status line, basically. And there's also this really good repository where this person like sort of consolidated all good Lua and NeoVim related stuff into like a single repository. It's really good. Look it up. So if you decide to write a Lua plugin, I would like at this point, I would really question whether you need this or not, and I'm going to tell you why. So this basically the layout of the smallest Lua plugin possible. You have something that's like if you want to define some mappings or other comments or something else, though it might be a bit bad idea. I'm going to tell you why in a second. You have your documentation, you have your README, and you have your Lua stuff here. So why am I saying that this thing might not be the best? So there you go. Let's standardize the plugin API. It's been a big trend up until now that most of the Lua plugins, all they do is they just export a setup function, and the plugin itself is not going to do anything at all. Like it's not going to affect your startup performance at all until you call the setup function. This allows for really decent like lazy loading experience, and you can basically just load the plugin once you actually need it, which is quite good. And it's also like an easy way to stop polluting the global namespace and to like just get all of the plugin related settings in one place, which is also pretty nice. So some of the good practices about your plugin, as we already talked about, it should do one thing exceptionally well. It should work out of the box. It should include some docs. It should integrate with other popular plugins if it's like applicable, and there should be a smooth feature deprecation. So if you decide one day, hey, this feature actually sucks and I want to remove it, like don't just like remove it straight away. Maybe like put a warning there to tell users to know that like, hey, this thing might not be the best. You probably want to like switch to this other plugin or just specify the commit that you want to use my plugin at. And speaking of the backward compatibility and removing of certain features, I feel like this is basically an Achilles' heel of Vim plugins, that some people, there isn't really a way to like go about versioning in the like Vim plugin ecosystem. It like goes the same for the Lua plugins or like remote plugins, because we don't really have an idea of semantic versioning. The majority of plugin managers, you basically tell them, hey, download everything there is from the main branch or like release branch, or you can specify a commit or whatnot, and just whenever it updates, like just pull the latest thing, which makes it really hard to do like backward incompatible changes. You basically have to like change a branch to, hey, this is the V2 branch, don't forget to like move there, and then you have to like put a warning in the older one to like, hey, if you want the new stuff, go there, otherwise specify this like global variable to suppress this warning, which kind of sucks. I wish there was a better way, though I cannot think of one. If you can, please let me know. I would be very interested to learn about it. Okay, so you wrote your plugin, great, you want to put it out there and let people use it, and like all of the open source community and contribution, awesome. What can we improve here? So you definitely should have a README. You should have a functionality like gist of what does your plugin do. Maybe have even like a demo, give something. You definitely should have a how to install it section, how to set it up, maybe some examples that people can just like copy code from to just try out different features. If you're open to contributions, do tell people about it. Have a section about, hey, these are the public APIs, feel free to use them. If you use anything else, those are considered internal. I can change them anytime. If you like do rely on them, that's it's on you. You can make it discoverable by putting on GitHub. You can also specify some repository tags, which is quite nice, a way to like discover, hey, I'm interested in some NeoVim plugins, hot NeoVim plugins in my area, where to find them. And also a good thing is leveraging GitHub templates. So whenever people come to a plugin and say, hey, your plugin sucks, it doesn't work, and you start like playing ping pong with them with the question like, hey, what version of NeoVim you're running? And they'd be like, hey, I'm actually running Vim. What OS are you on, etc., etc. You know this drill. And you can also add some GitHub actions for like linting, tests, convention checks, and whatnot. At this point, basically, I could tell you that I'm done. Thank you so much for watching. Now go make these amazing plugins, share them with me, share them with the community, put them on GitHub, hit me up on Twitter so I know what like your plugins do, because I want to steal like really cool ideas and also incorporate them in my workflow. However, there is just like one more thing. I absolutely did not code it just earlier today. Like I absolutely did not finish it like 5 minutes before this whole thing started. So let's imagine that we want to create our Vim plugin, right? And we tell it, hey, this is my name, and I want to create a plugin about Vimconf 2021. And what do we need? Do we want to define new syntax? Okay, sure. Do you want to define new file types? Why not? Buffer local options? Hell yeah. And lazy load functionality. Yeah, that's our jam. And don't mind that thing. And then it just pre-populates the whole like repository with basically templates for what you might want to like be using, and telling like, hey, this is the things you want to be using. This is what this file is used for. Please use this naming, or if you want to learn more, like you can look up these things. So that one is, yeah, you can find on GitHub. I put it like an hour ago, something. So at this point, awesome. I'm definitely done. So thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. Anton, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. If excellent. There are any questions, then
I loved the talk. I gotta say, I am going to be using this talk as my sort of recommendation for when people say, I want to write a plugin. I'm going to be like, wherever this YouTube video ends up, we're pointing it to right here. I loved it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Do we have any other last questions in the chat? Otherwise, we will hop back into our main Vimconf stage and say hello. Any tips for debugging performance issues with plugins? That's a good idea to think
Debugging
about.
performance.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good one. I think I wrote a thing. Let me somewhere. I have a little post or like a wiki thing about performance. You can look it up, go web dev and stuff, and there is this thing about the startup performance. How do you do this? There is this flag that you can pass to Vim, both Vim and NeoVim. Then I should probably make it larger. And also the script names that tells you every script that's been sourced up to this point, and it just like gives you a lot of information. You can kind of consolidate them and see what things you can do about them. This thing also includes a few like nifty things that you can apply to your setup to like get a better performance.